Welcome back and to part 4 of Beyond the Limen. Well done for making it this far, coming up to the halfway point here. So today I thought it'd be useful to really get down to the very premise of why we're doing what we're doing here, go straight to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter really is freedom. Now, that may not be obvious on the surface, but when it all boils down, this whole process of developing self-knowledge, however you want to think of that, whatever sort of spiritual path you're on, or whether you call it something else, it's really a process of developing self-knowledge. And that in turn is really about finding freedom. It's actually the same thing. Because see, at our essence, we are free. That is what we are. And according to the great idealist philosophers, that was what existence is in itself. In fact, Georg Hegel, the German idealist, said that the history of the world is none other than the progress of the consciousness of freedom. And this is exactly what's going on inside the microcosm of our own lives as well, is that we're becoming more and more aware of our freedom. Does that sound like a contradiction? Because if you're not aware of it, then how can it be freedom? Well, this is the thing with freedom. Freedom is the only thing that doesn't contradict itself. Because even when you use it to violate freedom, or even to become unaware of your freedom, it's only because you're free to do it that can be done. So you see, freedom, essentially, if we think of it in this way, we have certain images associated with freedom, perhaps. But really what it is something like non-contradictoriness. You see, Hegel believed that the entire universe checks out ultimately. It all makes sense in the end. There's nothing that doesn't have a place. There's nothing that exists in isolation, completely disconnected from anything else. There can be the appearance of that, and there is the process of becoming a self, putting forward a thesis in the world, whether it be of yourself or any idea or object in the world, so that the true self can be known. And that's exactly what we're doing here. This is what the process of individuation is. And it's about becoming undivided in yourself, which clearly only leads to greater freedom. So in today's session, we're going to be working with the self archetype, and we're going to be talking about that in a moment. But before we go there, I just wanted to give you a bit of background into the very premise here. And this is the premise of this project, Make It Conscious. And what I've listed here are 3 very important points that are not only vital to understand, but are also widely misunderstood. So the premise goes like this: you're free, you matter, and you know. So we're going to break this down a bit. First thing to note is that you're already free, and that your journey is one of becoming more aware of your freedom in whatever meandering or disjointed way it might seem to unfold. And you're not alone in that, by the way, because everyone's life is completely different. It has very different flavor. However, done well, it is always this progress towards greater consciousness of freedom. Doesn't mean it has to happen. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed by any stretch, because the very nature of freedom, as I've said, means that you're free to violate that. You're free to go off track. You're free to go off meandering somewhere and completely forget about this whole project. It wouldn't be freedom if you weren't able to do that. But because everything must check out in the end, there will be consequences to that. And that's not necessarily because you've done something bad or wrong, although it can be because you've consciously violated that fact. But it can also just be the very tension we experience as a way to keep us on that track. The very reason we suffer, the very reason we feel discontent or misalignment, is because everything must check out in the end. So we get derailed from this overall process in some way. And, you can be pretty aligned to it and still feel tension and suffering. That's the whole point. It's what keeps you on the move, on track. So this is key, because understanding that very nature, that there is this innate freedom, this innate non-contradictoriness. The idealists would call it the absolute. Some would refer to this as God or spirit, Geist. Knowing that this is what there is, and that this is also our own nature, is what compels us to traverse the rest of the way. When we realize that fact, it's a case then of, okay, how do I navigate from here on in order to actually move ever closer towards that? So that's the first point. You are free, and realizing that takes you the rest of the way. Really sets the scene. The second is that you matter. Now, there's a double meaning to this. Because firstly, of course, you matter. You have value. Your life matters. You experience suffering. You experience joy. You experience meaning. And that all has value. Not only that, but your choices affect other people, whether or not you choose to use your freedom for wholesome or unwholesome ends. That all affects other people. The extent to which you're willing to take responsibility in that regard, because we don't choose what's in our unconscious exactly, but we can choose whether or not we take responsibility for it. So, there's a question there as to what extent we are responsible, because we may not have put it there, but if we choose not to do anything about it, it sort of in some way becomes a responsibility. So your life matters, and what you do matters insofar as it affects other people. That's the first meaning of this section here, you matter. But the other meaning is that your mind matters, in that your mind plays a primary role in experience and how the world unfolds to you. This is key. This is the limen, right? So just as there's a limen between our conscious mind, conscious ego, and the great unconscious, there's a line between those things. And we go beyond that limen whenever we do active imagination. We dip into the unconscious. This is a limen that exists on the personal journey. This is the limen that once crossed, you go, okay, it's this process of becoming more free, and there is a path. The fact that there is a path at all, there's this understanding of that fact. And it's demarcated by this. It's that your mind renders your experience. It's not that your senses conform to an objective world in quite that way, but that what you are experiencing is your mind. It doesn't mean that there isn't something out there. I mean, Victor himself said that he who doesn't believe in an external world doesn't need proof, he needs a cure, right? This is the first German idealist. He's not saying that there isn't an external world out there. What he's saying is that the self and the mind play a primary role in how that world appears to you. So this is like, whoa, this is completely counter to anything we're taught in school, or how much of the world even operates at this time, predominantly operating on a materialist paradigm. So the irony here is that the word, matter derives from the same word as material. So you also matter kind of because you're made of matter, but your mind still plays a very key role here. And so that means that when we experience any kind of strain, suffering, misalignment, the idea is to then come back to the mind. Okay, what is this telling me about myself? Self-knowledge is the one thing you can never fail at if you pursue it, right? There's 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and self-knowledge. Anything that is born must die, must be negated, it must come up against negation, it must come up against the will of others imposing on its freedom, and it must also, if it chooses to, develop self-knowledge. It's the one thing you can't lose at. And there's something very philosophically interesting about that. So this relates to this idea as well. And so thirdly, because of the fact that you are free already, and because you matter, and because there is this great unconscious that is part of you, even if it's not consciously you, you know the answers. You don't need a guru. You don't need to outsource your wisdom to anyone else. And the unconscious contains, yes, the source of your challenges, but also the seeds of your development. So this is an encouragement to engage with all parts of yourself and say, yes, I have the answers in me somewhere. And so there's a kind of faith that comes from that. And we talked about that in the previous episodes here. And then a kind of curiosity and even creativity that comes from that. Okay, I'm having a challenge. I'm having a challenge with this coworker or a family member, or my health isn't where it needs to be. What is this telling me? What is going on here? And you have the answer somewhere inside of you. It's just a question of doing the work and facing it and opening up a communion with it, yes, but it doesn't only consist of that, because there's actually work involved. There's an energetic exchange that must go on. It doesn't mean that everything comes down to inner work, because there is outer work as well. And inner work is outer work and vice versa. But the point here is that the wisdom you seek and need is actually already implicit within you. It's just a question of knowing that and then taking the action to pursue it. So with that said then, that opens up this whole idea of the self with a capital S. And this is not a new idea, but Jung certainly used this word as well. And he described it as the principle and archetype of orientation and meaning. And for him, he says, therein lies its healing function. So this is key because it's on one hand the principle of what you are. It's the totality of the psyche. It's everything, both conscious and unconscious. But you see, describing it in such technical terms doesn't really convey what it is. There's nothing outside of it. So in that sense, it is what there is, but it's also an idea and an experience. And because a large part of it is unconscious, both the challenges and the seeds of wisdom, well, therefore, we can only engage with those aspects of it through the conscious mind. And it appears as an archetype. So this idea of totality also appears as an image unto itself, as a symbol. I'm not going to suggest any ideas for that because I'm going to leave that to you in the exercise here. But this archetype of the self is something we can engage with and do engage with in life. Sometimes we project it onto other people. Sometimes it's an object, a symbol, and at other times, of course, a more human-like figure in our imagination. So Jung goes on to say that this insight signified an approach to the center and therefore to the goal, this place of uncontradictoriness. And out of it emerged a first inkling of my personal myth. So this is the epicenter that we're all circumambulating and ebbing and flowing towards. So in today's practice, we're going to be working with this symbol and seeing if we can uncover a little bit about your own personal myth and your own personal meaning. So when you're ready, I'll invite you to make sure you're comfortable and close your eyes. So just starting in the usual way, just seeing if you can cease to do anything. And as soon as you relax the ego mind, you might notice a flood of disparate inclinations come into your mind. So let's start just by doing a bit of basic meditation. And bringing your attention to the sensation of the breath. Notice where you feel it the most. Is it the sensation of the air moving through the nostrils? Or the rise and fall of the chest or abdomen? Wherever it is, just choose that spot and set your intention to keep your attention there. So we're going to continue in this way now for the next minute or two. And if at any point you get distracted, just bring the attention back to whatever it is you're doing. And now, just gradually open your mind up to the imagination. And first imagine yourself in a place where your true self resides. Remember, this is symbolic, not literal. It might appear as a wide open space, or a grand palace, or cathedral. Whatever feels like the kind of place where your true self resides. Just allow it to form naturally. And now in this place, you're going to invite the self to appear. So allow the self to appear, again, gradually, in symbolic form. It might appear as a human being, a symbolic object, or some kind of mythical creature. Just, again, allow it to form naturally. No need to worry if it appears either obscure or obvious or even bizarre. There's nothing fixed about this symbol. But it is giving you feedback into the self, how it relates to you, and your current relationship with it. So, with the symbol fully formed, take a few moments to examine it more closely. Notice its general appearance, as well as any salient details or accessories. If it does appear as a person or creature, then what is its demeanor and its overall stance towards you? This symbol represents both the totality of the psyche and your own full potential. And now notice yourself in this place. Just for a moment, observe the differences between how you are in this place, in your existential form, and the symbol of the self that's before you. And now connect with the symbol of the self in however way you need to. Just greet it, perhaps, engage with it, and notice how it responds to you. Having observed both yourself and the symbol, ask the symbol, how do you perceive me currently? Ask the symbol, in what ways am I aligned to you and my potential? In what ways am I misaligned with you? What are the main current differences between us? Ask the symbol, what is it I need to work on now in developing my freedom and my awareness of it? So, having asked these questions, just take another minute or two now to engage in a free form interaction with this symbol. Feel free to express your own needs and concerns, challenges, as well as listen to what it has to say. You can ask it any questions you need to ask, or just engage with it physically. Spend some time with it. So take this time now just to deepen your relationship with this symbol of the self. So, as this interaction draws to a close, the self hands you a symbolic gift. This gift contains what you need in order to traverse the next stage in your journey towards greater self realization and freedom. So, accept this gift now and examine it more closely. Feel its weight, texture, notice any interesting details. It's okay if you don't understand what it means right now, but trust that you have what you need at this time. So, thank the self for the gift and its company. And you can let it all go now. Bringing your attention back into the space around you. Noticing any physical sensations, sounds, and opening your eyes again in your own time. Okay, so well done. Hope you found that nourishing, useful, insightful. As I said just there, trust that you have what you need and that it went exactly how it needed to. No matter whether it was enjoyable, painful, difficult, it all has value on the road to self knowledge. All of it. There's nothing that doesn't have value. It all contains utility and insights. The idea here is not to create a pleasant experience. I mean, that can happen, but it's really to understand where we've become misaligned from that self. The self represents that full culmination, that complete non-contradictory essence of ourselves. So if you've got some sense now of that destination and what it all culminates in, that's great. And there's reasons why we're not that right now. So, but that's the journey. And what stands in the way often is fear. And so in the next session, we're going to be delving further into fear. So it'll be interesting to see how the views compare and the likes compare with that video. But no, I mean, that's a large part of where the work is done as well, working through resistance. So we'll save that for next time. But for now, I will thank you for your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next one.